We're here today to acknowledge a sense of unity and community that we're experiencing after the horrors of last week, after the murders of Vicki Lee Jones, Maurice Stallard, and the tragic incident that occurred in Pittsburgh at the Tree of Life Synagogue. We're holding this moment of unity, a ceremony in Metro Hall today to show the world how a compassionate city responds to a tragic situation. We are honored today to have Rabbi Galia Rooks, who serves as the rabbi at the temple. We have Reverend Kevin Nelson, who's the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Jeffersontown. And following him, we will have remarks from Mayor Fischer. Thank you.
Thank you to Reverend Vincent James and to Reverend Kevin Nelson for your brave work in our community, and thank you, Mayor Fischer, for the honor of being invited to speak here today and for your commitment to make Louisville a city of compassion every day. And thank you, each of you, for being here to show your solidarity and support in the face of the recent murders of innocent people here in town and in Pittsburgh. I am devastated, outraged, frightened, but to be honest, I can't say that I'm really surprised. Just over a year ago, when white nationalists rallied in Charlottesville and the president said there were good people on both sides, I feared this day would come. Neo-Nazis, the KKK, the alt-right, no matter what you call them, the hatred and intolerance they spew are not what our country represents. The wink-wink, nudge-nudge of acceptance granted to them and others who foster prejudice calls to the lowest elements of our society and condones their bigotry. If we allow our leaders to model contempt and hatred for Jews, African Americans, Muslims, the LGBT community, people of color, immigrants, refugees, the disabled or needy of our country, we are headed down a path that history has shown us ends only in death and disaster. Martin Niemöller was a Lutheran pastor in Germany during the rise of Hitler. He wrote these words to leave a lesson for future generations. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the press, and I did not speak out, for I was not a member of the press. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us that we must never forget everything Hitler did in Germany was legal, and that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor, writer, humanitarian, and Nobel Peace Prize winner, spent his life reminding the world of the dangers of indifference and hate and the importance of speaking up against injustice and intolerance. He said, "I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides." In any society, fanatics who hate don't only hate me, they hate you too. They hate everybody. There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, he said, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. Our protest must be clear and constant. Next Tuesday, the midterm elections will tell who we really are as a nation, who we choose to be, who we vote to represent our values and our vision of what this land of liberty can truly be. I'd like to close with two poems. The first one I wrote just moments after Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel, was assassinated. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and now there is darkness on the face of the deep, and the earth is void of righteousness and compassion. And God divided between the heavens above and the heavens beneath, and now the heavens are filled with cries of suffering, and the seas could never contain the oceans of innocent blood. And the Holy One, blessed be, gathered together the waters on earth, And now upon dry land there is grass and trees bearing fruit and anger bearing hatred and death. And on the fourth day the eternal God illuminated sun and moon and stars. And now darkness threatens to overcome the power of light, and the forces of evil and war unite. Then the Lord God called forth living creatures to swarm in the heavens and in the seas. And now the skies are filled with weapons of destruction, and violence clouds the very air we breathe. And the Creator of all the world said, "Let us make animals and human beings." And now human beings have become as animals that demand domination over all God's works and kill and destroy what they cannot control. But on the seventh day, God rested from all labor, and God blessed the work of creation. And now we must live that blessing. We must turn from death and killing and learn again the message of hope and love and peace. And now, let there be peace, let there be light, let there be promise, let there be love. And I see that my time is up, so I'm only going to read the first paragraph of a poem that I wrote for Mayor Greg Fischer. It's called The Seeds of Compassion. May the tears shed for these souls gunned down in a war against hope water the seeds of compassion.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good morning to all, to Pastor James, to Mayor Fischer, Congressman Yarmouth, to all the dignitaries and all those who stand in solidarity for what is right and for what is moral. My name is Kevin Nelson, First Baptist Church of Jeffersontown, and on last week we were potentially the victims of another church slaughter. But thank God that we were spared, while we still pray for the families of those who were snuffed out. If I wanted to say anything to this city, to this state, to this country, to this world, one of the things that I have come to the realization of is that from childhood, most of us have been taught the importance and the value and the significance of investments. All investments have some value to them. And while we live in a nation where there are a multiplicity of investments, there are two things we expect from every investment, and that is a return, but we also must take a risk. The return is what we seek after. And as I stand before you today, before we can get the return, I receive the return of respect for one another, despite our differences, despite our ethnicities, despite our cultural differences. We must take a risk. Before we can have a nation that's genuinely united, where we don't just speak it with our mouths, but we exercise it in our daily lives, we must be willing to take a risk. And the risk that we must take today is the risk of going against our own parties to stand for what's right, the risk of maybe being ousted by our own family members, our ties with our friends, and our loved ones. As a pastor who has been pastoring now in the First Baptist Church for 17 years and been in ministry since 1979, one of the first things that God put in my spirit is that nobody comes before my God. And while I love my mother, my father, my sisters, my brother, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, I never put any of them, nor myself, before what I've learned from my God. And so I take the risk daily of making an investment in the lives of people, even if my family don't agree with me, even if my church family were to oust me, I would still make that investment. And my cry to this city, my cry to this nation, my cry to the world is that regardless of our differences, let's make an investment. Make the investment and take the risk of your own people, your own party, your own loved ones ousting you, but stand for what's right. Because I'm a firm believer that in the end, righteousness will prevail and love will overcome all things. And so even when everyone else turns their back on you, you've got to lay down at night with a clear conscience that I did the right thing. And I want to say to you, as I plead on behalf of our church family, this city, this state, this country, for all of us to take a risk, I never ask our people to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. And so today I'm making the investment of making sure that I love everybody, making sure that I don't allow any party that I'm connected to, any people that I'm connected to cause me to take a path of unrighteousness simply for my own victory or for my own reward or my own returns. The return that I want is a united nation. The return that I want is a people, a race of people that can love each other and respect the differences that God has created us in, and not to be so concerned about what others say, but to know that the return in the end will benefit us all and not just a few. My prayers for this country, I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Rev. Right after my remarks, we'll have a moment of silence to honor the victims of last week's tragedies, both here in Louisville and in Pittsburgh. Then we'll also hear Rabbi Rooks sound the shofar, and we'll ring the bells at City Hall. We've also asked houses of worship throughout the community to join us by sounding shofars, ringing bells, or taking other faith-appropriate actions to rouse our souls, to honor the victims of these hate crimes, and to call us to unity. The pain of these last 7 days, as provoked by the hate crime in our city and by the horrific tragedy in Pittsburgh, has been burned into our consciousness. And even as grief gradually gives way to healing, there will be scars. These scars are part of us now, part of the shared experience and memory that makes us a community. In the last 7 days, I have heard from people of all ages, races, faiths, and background with the same question: what can I do? So many have come forward to share their empathy, their tears, their outrage, and their compassion for Vicki Lee Jones and Maurice Stollard and their families, and for the congregants of the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. For our African-American community, the murders of Miss Jones and Mr. Stollard were a searing reminder of the racism that many endure every day. And while we have been shaken by the events of last week, our community has demonstrated the social muscle that people all across Louisville have spent years working together to build. We are proud of our city and proud of our bonds with each other. We will not let the actions of one hate-filled individual impact our determination to build a more perfect city. We will be stronger than ever with Louisville's message to the country and to the world that we are a welcoming, compassionate, and proudly diverse American city. We are one city with one future. We refuse to live in fear or isolation. We refuse to give in or to excuse racism, hatred, and prejudice. And we refuse to accept the tired excuse that nothing can be done to prevent these horrific acts of violence, particularly gun violence. That idea is ridiculous, it's unacceptable, and unworthy of the great country that each of us deserve. The America we deserve does not shrink from challenges. The America we deserve finds a way. To suggest anything else is an insult, a betrayal to the victims of these hate crimes, and a betrayal to the people who fought and sacrificed and died over the centuries for American ideas like the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. For our city and for our country to move forward with strength and unity, all of us must recognize the ongoing systemic obstacles to people of color achieving their full human potential and confront and reject racism and hate in all of its forms. That is the fight that is still with us today, and it's one that many in this room and around this city have been taking on for a long time. From the courageous Louisvillians of the Civil Rights era to Kelly Watson, our Chief Equity Officer, and Maurice Stollard's daughter, who is leading many of our efforts to make Louisville a more equitable city. Her work includes planning our Lean Into Louisville initiative, a series of community events and conversations that will launch next year to help our city overcome all forms of hate and discrimination, past, present, and future, blatant or subtle. My office will continue discussions with civic and faith leaders from around the city to plan more what we will do, how we will work together to help bring even greater resources, equity, and resilience to communities and individuals throughout our city. Healing our community is the work of a city on the rise, a city that believes in itself and believes in our future. It is a challenge that we will meet together by continuing to talk and listen to each other and by treating each other with respect. In memory of Maurice, Vicki, and all of those that we're here to honor and remember, let's dedicate ourselves to the future of a city that we all deserve, a city of brothers and sisters joined by a common heart aimed at celebrating the beautiful human potential that we all possess. Together, we will find the way. Let us now take a moment of silence.
Mayor Fischer asked that I blow the shofar. In biblical times, it was not only to celebrate holidays and announce the coming of the new month, but to call people to arms if we were being attacked. In the modern world, it's used on the highest of holy days to arouse our souls and call us to righteousness and to really examining what it is we stand for and what it is we need to do. In this particular case, the plaintive call of the shofar is also reminding us of the 11 innocent souls who died, who were massacred on the day of rest, on the holy Sabbath day in a holy place, their synagogue. And it's my honor, the idea of having the Metro Hall bells ring and church bells. And I believe that there are some mosques that will have the call of the mizuin at the same time and the sounding of the shofar that will call us to unite and to remind us that our love and respect for all of God's children is greater than any hatred that any gun-toting extremist can foist upon us.
We want to thank everyone for coming and showing the unity, that this is truly a time not to turn on each other, but to turn to each other. Thank you very much.